Okay, at this point, we will open the public hearing concerning the 2021 operating budget. Turn it over to Superintendent Cole.
Yeah, so this is a public hearing. At this time, if there are any comments or questions that the public had, this would be the time to bring those to our attention. So I guess we would ask that they raise their hand, and Dr. Bloomquist is the man behind the curtain. Dr. Bloomquist, is there any comments that might be out there?
Nothing so far, but I'm monitoring the group chat for anybody who would like to post something. Okay.
So we'll give that about, we'll give it the 30 seconds of silence, Gary, and you can bring that to a close if there are no comments.
Well, do we need a quorum or anything for this meeting?
We have quorum.
Well, I know, but I'm just, if we need one, then Secretary Clark, please find out if we got a quorum here.
Definitely have a quorum. Let the record show we have a quorum.
Okay, there are no public comments at this time, so that would conclude.
Okay, we will close the public hearing concerning the 2021 operating budget. At this time, we will open the Grants Pass School District number 7 school board meeting. If you join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent Cole, do we have any additional?
No additional written communications at this time.
Okay, so if we have anybody who would like to speak to one of the agenda items, if they would send in a chat message over to the Zoom meeting. Director Bloomquist will bring those to our attention. And at this point, we will move to the consent agenda. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
That would be Member Durbin moved and Member Nelson seconded. Is there any discussion? Superintendent Cole, is there any adjustments we need to make to the agenda?
No adjustments to the agenda that I'm aware of.
Just mention I appreciate the special education follow-up information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Linda did it. She had that on my desk the very next day. So she did a nice job with that.
Okay, all those in, motion on the floor. Secretary Clark, please call the vote.
Yes. Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
Yes.
Member DeLagrange?
Yes.
Member Durbin? Yes. And Member Wilkins?
Okay, at this point, we are going to recognize our retiree and long-serving staff. And I'll turn that over to Superintendent Cole to do that.
Yeah, so we did do this at the last meeting. However, since we opened with executive session, it was about 2 hours and 15 minutes long. We lost a lot of callers and people tuning in. So we've let people know that we moved that to the front of this agenda, and we're going to give it one more round just to announce for anybody who's out there who may have tuned out after 2.5 hours of executive session last time. So our apologies on my behalf and on behalf of the board, but we want to do our best to make that right. So we'll proceed with recognizing retirees of 2019-20. Go ahead, Dr. Bloomquist. Pam Schwerf served as school psychologist with us for the last 15 years. So Gladiola office manager Cindy Horban has been with the district for 24 years. Don Lorenzen has been the bookkeeper and I believe worked out of the business department for us, a combined total of 27 years. And Tom Mannery has made this district office look great in Grants Pass High School, serving as a custodian for the past 10 years. And Stacy Morgan, serving as a longtime coach, PE, 31 years of service. Kathy Dungy, who has accomplished a lot here and supported our district in so many ways, serving as a PE teacher, coach, and numerous other accomplishments for the last 30 years. Mary Chamberlain worked both at Grants Pass High School and most recently South Middle School as the counseling secretary, has 18 years of service in the district. Danny Walker has been the head custodian at Highland Elementary and has served the district for the past 8 years. Sue Gleppy, Highland Elementary first grade teacher, has taught several other grades but has been with the district for 15 years. Susan Vogel, a Title I assistant at Lincoln Elementary for 27 years. Steve Bastrop has been with our maintenance department, primarily responsible to keep the water moving in the right directions for the past 25 years. Rick Pennington, Parkside Elementary special education teacher in our life skills classroom for 12 years. Alan Siegel, Parkside Elementary special education assistant for the last 11 years. Linda Ameling, Parkside Elementary special education site-based assistant for the last 18 years. Stephanie Hammervold, Parkside Elementary second grade, has taught some other grades as well, but been with the district for 21 years. Catherine Voorhees, Parkside Elementary, third grade teacher for the last 22 years in the district. Annette Boyd, Parkside Elementary, fourth grade teacher for the past 14 years. You can see Rob Lewis has some hiring to do over at Parkside. Rick Hill, Redwood Elementary, fourth grade teacher, 28 years in the district. Elizabeth Lenander, Redwood Elementary music teacher for the past 20 years. Andy Miller has been a bus driver with us for 1 year. So just thank you to our longstanding and dedicated employees. We extend our gratitude to all of our retirees for their dedication, hard work, and commitment. They've shown our students. We wish them a relaxing and well-deserved retirement. You will be missed. Thank you to those folks for their dedication.
Now, the board would just like to say thank you because at our level, we get many of those studies up at OSBA, and one of the greatest factors in student educational achievement is people of the district. So I view we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So we will now move to reopening of schools update.
Yeah, so as you're aware, there's still a lot of things up in the air. We're expecting an update on guidance on June 30th and again in the middle of July. But our folks have been working their tails off, meeting with teachers and a variety of other things, Sherry's connections at the state level, between operations and budgeting. There's a lot of moving parts there when we have to look at reopening schools safely. So I'm going to go through our directors and ask them each to give you just a high-level overview of the work that they've been engaged in. And so I'm just going to call you out one at a time. And Sherry, we'll start with you on the operations side. We're pretty versed on the budget side, I think, after the last meeting. There's still so much up in the air and undecided, but go ahead, Sherry. Take yourself off mute.
Sorry, I always forget. So on the operations side, working with our transportation department, our maintenance departments, food service, all of our support services, just trying to be supportive to what we're trying to do on the curriculum side of the world, and just making sure that our buildings are in an acceptable condition for having kids come back to school. lots of questions out there as far as the guidance that we've gotten from ODE, lots of conflicting guidance just within their own documents that's causing a lot of consternation and frustration amongst all of us. And so hopefully we will get some of that clarified, just so that we know how many kids we actually can safely put on a bus and how many kids that we can actually have in our buildings and in a safe manner, and mainly just making sure we can get some consistent guidance. So not a ton of, absolutes that we can share with you, because it is still all up in the air. But I can assure you, as Kirk mentioned, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in all aspects of what we need to do to bring kids back to school in September. So all of us working together, trying to come up with a good plan that's going to be acceptable to the state as well as our local health department.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yep.
Linda, are you out there? Linda White?
Yes. So in the world of special education, our students have a variety of struggles, disability types, and medical needs. So the safety and sort of health protocols and considerations become complicated for our students who experience disability. In fact, some of our students who are medically complex, it may be a team decision that those students don't come back into the building right away. But I will say, as a team, our goal is to get as many kids back as often as possible for as much of the weeks as possible, while still adhering to the physical distancing and all the other cohorting requirements that we're being asked to do. So for special education, we will likely have many of our staff wearing face shields, because the staff who work with for example, like our speech pathologists, our staff who work with our life skills students, are often needing to work very close with students. We're going to try to consider having our special education kids in our buildings as much as we can. But again, still quite a few unknowns. But we all are already beginning to schedule and think through how the support services will work for students' IEPs. What we do know is we need to meet all of their IEPs. So there will likely be some creative things that we need to do. And this is a challenging time, but we're up for the challenge, and we're working real hard to understand what we're being asked to do, and then we'll do it the best we can.
Thank you, Linda. Dr. Bloomquist.
Well, I just want to start by saying what a privilege to work with this team. I've worked with a lot of teams over the years, and this group of people have endless supplies of energy and are creative, out-of-the-box thinkers. And all of us sit on many committees that are either in the region locally or actually statewide. And every time we sit on these committees, we are kind of ahead of what other people are doing. So I appreciate the thinking and the challenging by this team. For technology standpoint, we're working on making sure that our Chromebooks will be stocked and ready to go, but we have to be flexible. We just got word from one of our main suppliers that we're 105 days out from whenever we order Chromebooks to get them. So we have enough for all of our kids, obviously, but we have some that are going out of, they're expiring, they're old. And so just kind of having to have a plan and then another plan and another plan. One of the big issues, obviously, for our teachers is going to be the ability to quickly and nimbly flip back and forth between in-person and virtual learning. So we've got 43 teachers representing K-12, all grade levels, career technical education, ELL, special education, music, to see what is the best virtual software that would support teaching and learning. So we have about another week's worth of work with different vendors that are sharing what those tools are, and then how do we build out a really robust staff development for the fall so that all of our teachers are prepped and ready to go for in-person or online learning. And one of the big questions we're asking is, in what way can something like a learning management system, a software package, actually increase or engage kids in learning and actually help facilitate teachers in their teaching? So when you have to do things remotely, it's just a very strange environment, but there are ways we can help facilitate that. So those folks are aggressively pursuing something that will work well for all of their colleagues, and we'll probably have that recommendation in the next couple of weeks or so. Other than that, it's just really helping monitor for our kids in terms of what their needs are at home, trying to partner with some folks like AT&T on getting wireless internet access basically out to some very remote places where our kids are living, and making that happen. It's been really difficult to ascertain who does and who does not have connectivity. And when we move into everybody's got to be in school every day, whether it's in person or digitally, we got to make that happen for them. So we're trying to get those going for them this summer.
Yeah.
So we had like 3,500 Chromebooks given out to students during the school year. Have those been returned? Are they still in those hands? And do we have an idea of what our current property numbers are?
We do, yeah, great questions. So we checked out just about 3,700 total when it was all said and done. We are down to about 600 left to be returned. So the schools have done a great job. We had a whole process for bringing those Chromebooks back. And so now we're in the summer mode of calling families to tell them, hey, we need that back so we can get it serviced and ready to go for the fall. We will probably maintain a whole fleet of Chromebooks of about 6,500 totally in service. So we have more than enough to cover every single child, kindergarten through grade 12, if we need to be 100% online next fall. So we can do that. And our principals are working through what do we need to have if we're hybrid. I'm half in school, 1 day, 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then I'm home the other 2 or 3 days a week. And what do they need to have in terms of technology to make sure it's easy for them and they don't miss a beat between Monday and Tuesday, depending on where they are.
You want me to mail you a razor to your remote office? You just proved that you can grow a full beard in 1 week. Looks good.
Does make some jealous. It does make some jealous.
Okay, so just to clarify, we have 6,500 in stock. Does that include the 600 that are still out in?
Correct. Yeah, that would still be with those that are out. We actually know where all of them are, and we're in that process of, oh, that's right, we'll bring that next week statements from people. So in some cases, we might have a few families that never got all the way there. If they have them in the fall, it's probably okay. Something just to be tracking too, the Chromebooks last, Google guarantees them for 6.5 years from when the central processing unit is born. So when it's stamped and put into a machine, that the Google environment will last on that device for 6.5 years. And so we have some Chromebooks that are definitely there. They're 6 and 7 years old. What's interesting is that they still tend to work. There's a few pieces of software out there that they won't take the upgrades to, but in general, they still work. So we'll have about 1,000 Chromebooks that will be taken out of service, but actually will still be somewhat functional. They'll be really useful in terms of if kids have forgotten their Chromebook and it needs to be in class, and teachers will then have some extras to have around and available. So we should be doing okay.
Thank you.
So grateful that for so long, each principal, when they were talking about what they wanted to use their funds for, and getting one-to-one in each classroom, we kind of got to a point last year where we're like, okay, we feel like we're kind of there, and then coronavirus hit, and we actually needed all of those computers in a real bad way. So I'm grateful that we did that, ramping up.
Can I ask a silly question? This is Member Nelson. I stand and do colonoscopies all day, and I get to listen to all of the mothers talk about the difficulties of educating their children over the last 3 months. Have we thought about how to help the parents as we get into this hybrid model? I mean, I know we haven't said that, but I can't imagine us going back to school without some sort of hybrid model in September.
So I'll start to address that, and you guys can fill in here. So part of what I was going to mention is we are going to start. We're going to do instead of 1 week of clerical and professional development, we're going to do 2 weeks. What Todd talked about, the software, is called a learning management system. Right now, you're all familiar with Google Classroom, but it has a lot of limitations. And so there are learning management systems out there that are actually designed to really flow well from in the classroom to the home. And kids won't have to go into 6 different Google Classrooms. This is everything built in calendar. It's built in Zoom type software. It's built in, teachers integrate. I mean, so it's really a one-stop shop that is just so much more, and it's easier for the kids to navigate. And will be easier for the parents. So we'll be putting together some tutorials that will be available to parents on how best to support, but largely the professional development that our staff are going to need to use the tools effectively. And so part of what Danny's report would have been that I'm giving, because he's moving his daughter to Arizona and not here today, is you'll see modified calendars in there for elementary and secondary that include that professional development time. And we've essentially negotiated some conference days out of the calendar so we can accomplish these PD days. And so we'll be continuing to work with the association on how to do that. But thank you, that's a great question, was how do we support parents to do that, especially for the littles? So we're trying to figure out how well we can do some what's called synchronous remote learning, where everybody's in the class is doing the same thing at the same time, and then there's asynchronous when kids are doing stuff on their own that's been placed in the classroom. And so we're just trying to figure out how to do that well, so that parents, one of their main jobs is to just get their kids started and they're connected to their classroom as much as possible at home. We're trying to figure out how best to utilize that and accomplish that. And so I feel really good about us and the process that Dr. Bloomquist is running with our staff to do that. And I brought it up in a local superintendent's meeting, and Medford School District is going down that pathway as well. I think we're well ahead of them. I've got the ESD working on bargaining for consortium prices on this software. So yeah, Scott, part of that is how do we do a better job supporting parents delivering the education, and we want to equip both our teachers, but also from the district level to streamline it so it's not all over the place like we experienced last week.
Well, I think everybody recognizes that this was thrust upon all of the teachers overnight, literally, and that we were ill prepared from okay, now we all have to just do this kind of standpoint. But it was fascinating, and I know that our family is an extreme example, but I have 5 children, and so we had to try to navigate 40 different, or almost 40 different classrooms. We were getting emails from all of the teachers, all of the principals, the superintendent, and so at the end of the day, my email basket would be full of all of this stuff, and it became email overload, and pretty soon I was like, thankfully my wife's home, I'm just deleting all of this because it's too much, but I watched her get frustrated trying to keep everybody in task and online. So it will be interesting to see, obviously we don't know what it looks like, but that piece of the parent education is going to be critical to help them navigate. Because I agree with you, Google Classroom was not the user-friendly environment. So
I could add to that, Dr. Nelson, that so both of the vendors that we're looking at right now, the 2 contenders are Schoology and Canvas. Those are the product names. And both of them come with applications for students and for parents. So there's a parent portal, but it isn't just a push notification kind of a thing where you're still getting all those emails that you have to delete. But it really is more about what's going on with the child, what assignments they're trending on, that they're working on, where do they need supports. And it also allows teachers to regroup children who are struggling a little bit or need to leap ahead. They need enrichment, and they can regroup in using those tools in a different way. The parent piece is going to, once we decide on that learning management system, that's going to be a different conversation to have. How do we support parents at home if we have to be every other day or whatever that is? Ideally, kids would still be on a schedule. So, we start school at 8 o'clock on Monday, and even though I'm at home on Tuesday, I'm still starting school at 8 o'clock, and I have my things that I'm doing. And we'll explore some different options where Kirk mentioned synchronous learning, where maybe I am at home, but I'm also live streamed into the classroom. So I'm actually watching the teacher teach, and there's kids in the classroom and kids at home working together in these digital platforms. So we're not quite sure what that all is going to look like yet. A lot of that will depend on the comfort level of a teacher and the ability to kind of manipulate and use these digital realms. But our teacher team right now, I've got several that are already trying to model out what would a classroom look like in one of these learning management systems so that I can really engage kids in the learning. And so they're excited about it, and they're working hard at it, and they're going to create some good templates for the rest of our staff.
Great, thank you. I just asked one other thing, and that is on the parent portal. If you could put the geometry answers for me so that I can make sure that I'm teaching my kid correctly. It's been a long
There's a little button.
Cheat sheet.
Yeah. The parent cheat sheet. Here's the answer, just so you know.
All right, that's what I need. I need to look smart for my freshman.
This is Member Durbin. I love everything I'm hearing. I'm very concerned on the synchronous learning piece. I'm just even forecasting in my own household that if there's a schedule, which I agree is paramount to a kid being in a routine to do that, parents that are working and are going to be handing off their kids on the days that they're not in school to a grandparent or to a babysitter or to a daycare if they're open, and not being able to tune in at 8, or is that technology following the kid to grandma and grandpa's house? So now we're also having to teach grandma and grandpa how to do the LMS to get on there. I'm just trying to think through the way that we very poorly kept up with what we did previously, and understanding classroom, I had one, and it was still difficult to manage. But it was, okay, the time that we had set aside each week to do that changed every day, just based on our own family dynamic and needing to do that. So that's the part that I just get really nervous about, because I feel like a teacher get all this work in and, be able to have that morning session, have kids tune in, but then there's going to be maybe, a quarter of the class that couldn't do it until they got home at 5 or 6 at night. And so are they just going to miss out on that synchronous learning? Are we going to expect teachers to do 2 versions? Does that create contract issues? Because now teachers are teaching twice a day. I don't know. I spin out really easily when I start thinking about it, as I'm sure you do too, but that's my first concern.
Sure. One of the things, Member Durbin, that we've got is, and I'm doing this right now with our LMS adoption team, is they can't all be there at the same time for that training with the vendor or whatever that is. So we record all of those sessions, and then they go back in later when they have the time to do that, and they're watching the whole thing so they can be engaged in it. And then they are able to then give their feedback based on what they observed. And I see that probably as one of those tools to be flexible for families. Hey, doesn't always work for me to be ready to go with my kid at 8 o'clock in the morning, given my circumstance, but we could do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, to your point, and still be able to get, this is the whole full content and I'm an active learner. So but you're 100% right on. This is a really difficult thing we're asking families to do. And so depending on what the state tells us this week and next week, it either gets easier or it gets worse. And so building out how we support mom and dad in this is going to be part of our ongoing discussion. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, might as well do it now instead of later.
Can I ask one more question?
yeah, I have 2 directors to report out yet.
Oh,
So,
I'll wait.
go ahead. Trish, why don't you talk a little bit about what the secondary schools are doing?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. At the secondary level, we started a couple of weeks ago. We reached out to our teaching staff and asked them to be collaborators with us in this work. And we've had 3 meetings so far and have about 60 of our teachers involved in the task of designing what our instructional model will look like. Like Scott mentioned, as we read the guidance, at this point in time at the secondary level, unless something significant changes in the guidance, we don't see it being possible to bring students fully on campus every day. The square footage requirement, the 6-foot distance, the transitions, cohorting, et cetera, present some real challenges when you're talking about a high school of 1,800 kids, a middle school of about 800 kids, and so on. So we have definitely been exploring hybrid approaches more. We did spend some time on the all students on campus approach, But like I said, in case if things don't change, it's going to be a real difficult one for us. In the hybrid approach, well, first let me tell you, across the system, teachers, administrators, our goal is to see kids and not in these little boxes like I'm looking at you right now, but in person, making that personal contact. The idea of starting the school year with an online only is just, how do we establish those working relationships that we need to have with kids to help them be successful? So it's been a real priority to figure out a way to get kids on campus, at least for a portion of the time. We don't have a schedule to share with you today, but I would share with you a couple of big picture concepts that definitely have been on the forefront of our minds. Students at the secondary level will more than likely attend school 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week they will have distance learning. That allows us to get much smaller cohorts on campus and transition between class periods a little bit more effectively. As you can imagine, when you develop a schedule where you're only bringing a portion of your kids on campus, you have to do some pretty drastic things to school schedules. So both the high school and the middle school are not looking at, we will not be able to maintain our full complement of 7-period classes. We will need to make some adjustments to accommodate for the needed additional transition time. We also learned that students in full-on distance learning, taking 7 classes and managing 7 emails from 7 teachers, 7 content area coursework to be done. We had a lot of students experience struggles in that. So reducing the number of offerings. We're being really thoughtful about how we're doing that work. And as we kind of zero in on what our instructional day will look like, we'll come back to you with more concrete examples of what to expect in the school schedule. We are, North and South are trying to stay as common as possible, but you're talking about, 2 different school sizes, different number of staff that can be used across the spectrum. High school is taking a very different approach than the middle school schedule. And then Gladiola, our alt ed programs, we are looking at having kids on campus 4 out of the 5 days. So our most at-risk students would be on campus at least 4 days a week with 1 day of distance learning. So that's the current thinking on our reopening schools committee at the secondary level, and still a work in progress. Middle school will be meeting later this week and high school next week, and teachers have committed to working through July with us as we try to piece the puzzle together. It's a little complicated. That's it. Oh, I forgot one more piece. Probably the most difficult part, at least right now, without some further guidance from ODE and governor's executive order, is our staffing. And one of the things we know that we are required to provide is for parents who want to come back to school and have full online distance learning. They don't want to send the student in a hybrid approach because of their concerns over health and safety or whatever the case may be. That throws really a wrinkle into our whole puzzle as well. And so we're trying to navigate not only this hybrid piece, but how do we accommodate full distance learning for parents and students that wish to access it. So that's it.
Questions for Trish?
So when having less than 7 periods, 7 classes a day, is there going to be increased pressure on being able to graduate at all with having less opportunities to earn credit?
At the high school level, right at this moment, the current concept idea actually allows for students to earn more credit. It's a much different format than what we currently have. And so that's one of the things the high school admin and teachers have wanted to attend to, knowing that we already have a number of students who are credit deficient starting their junior year. We're working on some summer credit retrieval stuff right now, focusing heavily on juniors who need the credit to graduate. But at the high school level, the current schedule that they're really toying with actually increases credit opportunity. And that was one of the goals because of that concern, Debbie.
So a version of that would be, instead of taking 7 courses for a semester, you compress courses. So you would take 4 courses, but you're spending more time in each of those courses, so you're able to hit all of the content standards. And so in 1 quarter, you might actually take 4 courses, but when you're on campus, you're in those courses longer during the day, if that makes sense. So you can earn more and then stack it the next quarter as well with new courses. So you're earning a whole half a credit, but in a quarter, just taking fewer courses. Kind of a lot like college, if you think of it that way, in terms of how the terms work.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that affect some of the music and PE kinds of things?
Where those are the challenges that it poses. There's a lot of great questions like that we don't have the answers to, but I think Trish would vouch for the music teachers and how creative their thinking around some of this is. And they've been really good partners in trying to brainstorm and be really a good part of the solution, maintaining the integrity of programs. So, yeah.
I would add that what we are trying to do is plan with electives in mind as much as possible first. We know that electives are a big part of the draw for students to be connected to their school. And so scheduling with those elective needs in mind has been a high priority.
For PE, you just slap an activity watch on them and have it recording.
Or they put it on the dog and tell the dog.
Play fetch.
Yeah. This is Member Durbin. I just wanted to make one comment related to secondary education. It makes me flash back to when we went and visited the schools up north and kind of looking at the different scheduling opportunities we wanted to look at for middle school. And not that this is the time to do that, but potentially something to, if we go to a model that has, I think we were talking about, a longer chunk for your core classes with a different part of the day focusing on electives. I mean, we talked about a bunch of different stuff, but taking this opportunity to maybe we find something that helps with bridging that gap that we wanted to, going from elementary of 1 teacher, 1 classroom to high school, 7 periods, 7 teachers, 7 classes. And maybe the middle school comes out with this nice kind of hybrid approach after we kind of flesh out some ideas. I don't know. It was just, that sparked in my mind when Trish was talking.
As one school board member reminded me a couple weeks ago, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Yeah. And that's what this team is, just working their tails off. To be named another time. Director Zatola, you can give us an elementary perspective?
Yeah, so when thinking about what to share, it's hard to synthesize, untold hours, probably about 15 meetings into a succinct plan or sharing of a plan, and complicated by the fact we don't have a plan. So in general, we're looking at, following the guidance, we're looking at 3 models, which is obviously fully online. We have to always, just like secondary, we know that we have to be ready to flip that switch on it at any moment and go fully online. A hybrid schedule, which if we do a hybrid schedule, it will match the days that secondary has, with kids coming, with the high school, with kids coming 2 days a week and being online 3 days a week. Monday, Thursday, and Tuesday, Friday would be the in-person days. And then we have spent the majority of our time talking about how might we make full-time work, given all of the guidelines, and I'll say restrictions in the ODE guidance. We did meet with via Zoom with all elementary certified staff. So we had 6 different meetings The official guidance had not come out yet when we had those meetings, but we had some hints. So the principal of that building and myself shared what we thought might be some possibilities or some things that we were going to see in the guidance. Then they were assigned to breakout rooms. They all had a Google Doc with the same questions that they filled out. So just to get a very broad picture, first stroke input from elementary staff. The rest of the time has been really with the directors and with the elementary principals working on those ideas. Just like Trish said, obviously our first choice, our desire, is that we have kids here all the time. We want to maximize the amount of face-to-face time with our kids. We're very cognizant of the unique issues that distance learning places on younger children who have less capability of managing that by themselves, the impact on our families, but coupling that with the logistics of making full-time work. We have measured every single classroom. I've been in there with principals. We've, setting, chairs with tape measure and 6 feet apart. And so we have a map of every single space in our elementary schools and how many bodies, because it's not just about kids, it's about actual bodies. So how many bodies can fit into each space, coupled with our current enrollment and what we think that will look like for next year. So there are some possibilities of having our kids at school all day in a stable cohort if we utilize libraries, learning centers, Title I rooms, gyms, possibly cafeterias. So every usable space. With that comes a lot of logistical issues where we're not in a position to hire that many more teachers. So how do we facilitate that? We have ideas about how that might look. But then there's a monetary cost as well with setting up all of those learning spaces. So we're just trying to figure out, is it even possible? And then we'll need to weigh as an admin team the costs of all of that. And I don't just mean financial costs. I mean just, the instructional time, the social emotional issues, the impacts on our families, and then go forward. So we are not yet at a place where we can say what we're going to do. I'm going to be leaving here as soon as you're done with your questions, because the next ODE meeting is at 1 o'clock today. My team's over at Parkside waiting for me. So it's a ODE guidance for the fall, specific for elementary schools with our size enrollment. So there's constant information coming, and that was a lot of words to say. We're just trying to figure it out.
Elementary is a little bit more complex because of how they're not independent.
So we know that there's always a summer slide. Now there's a COVID slide. Do we have in place testing to see where those kiddos are going to be and we can mitigate the
Yeah, all of our normal processes, we are, as you've heard, starting with Trish and now with me for many years, talking about RTII, the response to instruction model. So that's a system-wide model, and our assessments are all in place with that. So we'll still be doing those in the fall. And then we're used to just taking kids. We take kids wherever they are, and we'll move them as far and as fast as we can. We know that there will have to be modifications. One of the questions that teachers were asked to answer is how we might identify essential skills, because it's quite possible, well, we already missed, time, and it's quite possible that next year we will also be missing time. So how do we get laser focused on what are the most important skills to set kids up for success. But quite honestly, we're not spending much time on that yet, because first we have to even just decide how are we getting kids to school? What kind of model will that look like?
Thank you.
I might just add to that, Ms. Brownell, that there's, in addition to the COVID slide, but there's a whole mental health piece that we are spending a lot of time processing and putting plans together for the fall, prepping families in order to reintegrate back with school. We have some folks that have really complicated home environments, and so their children have been in those home environments for extended periods of time, more than normal. And so their brains are adapting to that world. And many of you have had the brain discussion with me, but we're having that discussion with our counselor team, which is about 35 people on it, and then developing social-emotional adaptive plans for the fall so that all staff are supporting kids reintegrating back to school and socializing and working to unlearn some habits that they've been on. So that's going to be complicated, and that's an impact that we're going to see for many, many years. So that, particularly for our young children, the primary grades, where their brains are so receptive to their environment and are those long-term patterns of behavior from their environment are being rooted. And so that will be, it's going to be work ahead of us, but we're being very mindful about that.
Member DeLaGrange, I just have a question about, has there been any discussion either in the district or from ODE regarding using outdoor spaces as learning spaces to kind of help with, the space issues that we have?
We have a lot of flexibility with using any space we have. I mean, the guidance is, here's the minimum you need, and whether it's indoor or outdoor, they actually encourage more outdoor use of spaces when possible. So we have a lot of flexibility with that.
Well, like Member Brownell, I immediately thought of North Middle School, where we've been desperate to try and cover some of the walkways, outdoor spaces in normal times, with the different construction projects going on there. Is there any way to maybe get removal of some of these outdoor spaces?
I think, Sherry, that's something we can talk a little bit more of, but I'd really want to assess what the model is going to be, and then we look at our space, right, Trish? I see you nodding your head. But yeah, having covered space outside, supports the PE program, but also supports that some socialization in middle school that could happen as well. So, yeah.
Relieving the cafeteria. Kind of critical there.
Yeah, and as it stands right now, we'd be looking at serving meals in the classrooms, and I think that's, for the most part, I think most of our models are serving meals in the classrooms. Yeah. Certainly, having them in line, that many kids in line 6 feet apart, just we'd wrap around the building a few times. So.
This is Member Nelson. I just want to thank all the directors for your updates. I appreciate all the hard work having and continuing to do the same thing on the hospital side. I know the long hours and the difficulties that come in Zoom calls and trying to figure out guidance or figure out process without true guidance. If I might just make one recommendation from a public relations standpoint, and I know that some may feel this is premature, but we do have a communications director now, to come up with some statement to the district and the community about, just in very broad terms, what things may look like and what things we're doing to prepare the kids and the community for this return. I think that we do need to speak with a unified voice to the community about what you're doing and how we are going to be prepared for whatever it looks like. And I think being able to say something to the effect that we will likely have a hybrid model will help answer a lot of questions that people have. That we are working on getting a different type of virtual classroom, whatever. I mean, just very broad things without giving a lot of details, but I do think that it will help us work with the community a little bit better and allay a lot of fears that people have about what's coming, because I get asked questions all the time, and the things that I'm hearing are comical, even what people are imagining things will be like. And so I think we have an opportunity to communicate a message and let people know that things will be safe and that we're prepared to take the students back. So that would just be one recommendation I have as we move forward. We don't have to give a lot of details, but I do think this is our opportunity to communicate with the community a lot better.
Noted, thank you.
Put some guardrails up between here and here. Not sure about the middle, but.
Well, even this is Member Durbin, even if you say, look, we acknowledge that, you know, we're trying to identify a better learning management system because there were issues with the previous, so the parents can at least feel like, okay, they heard that, or they recognize that that was a struggle, and they're going to be focusing on a solution that will help with that.
Right.
Or that one of our top priorities is getting, you know, in contact with kids and being able to see kids on some consistent basis in the fall. You know, again, allaying some of those fears of, are we going to 100% online? My kids need to be in school. We're addressing the concerns that we're prioritizing, trying to fix, even if we leave the solution details a bit foggy.
And acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
You know, I was asked today, do all the kids have to wear masks? I don't know. And I don't know that we know, but maybe the best thing to do is say we don't know, just to let people know that we are understanding what the concerns are. We don't have the answers yet, but we're working on it. So it's just that communication piece that I think would go a long way to help.
I started to get Crayola mask advertisements in my social media feeds yesterday because Crayola has come out with a 5 mask set, 1 mask for each day of the week that's washable with its own laundry bag. And so there's a Monday, a Tuesday, and a different color for Crayola crayons or whatever. But obviously they know I have a little kid and the prospect of returning to school in the fall. There's the teacher set and then there's the student set. So it's interesting talking about masks. But
Is that it for
That's
the reopening of schools?
thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move to board reports and special concerns. And this is Member Richardson. So I guess the first thing I somewhat wanted to address was the idea of experts and that there's certainty in an answer. Sometimes 2 + 2 is 4, and we know that except for a few fringe people that that's the answer. In the case for this particular pandemic, there is no answer, and that's why ODE can't give us an answer. And we're going to just have to factor uncertainty into the work that we do. There is no answer. We're not going to get guidance. Guidance is never going to come. There is no person out there that knows the right thing to do. So somewhat we have to get used to that, and the best thing we can say is it's an informed opinion. We have the best information we have. This is the direction we're going to go. Yes, there are alternate directions based on other opinions, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to pick this one. But acknowledge that it is not 100% bulletproof, that we know that's the answer, because there is no answer. So,
Well, I think it's an opportunity though, right? I mean, we have the opportunity to think for ourselves and come up with the best plan for what we know our community, our facilities, our students are going to respond to. And I would agree. I don't think we need to shy away from that. It's been fascinating to watch at the hospital the same process. People need to feel like there is a definitive plan and somebody smarter has been able to say this is the right thing to do and it will work every time. And the reality is that is not true. And I think we see that here. We need to have, I think, the courage and maybe even the confidence to say, we've looked at it, this is the best thing for us to do. We don't have all the answers, but we feel good that we have a good group of people who have made a very common sense decision, and we're going to go with it until, and if it needs to change, then we do something else. So, I mean, this is an opportunity for us to make maybe some difficult decisions, but we have good people. You have a great team. I mean, we have willing partners, so I have all the confidence in the world that we will be successful.
So the things I think about from a board level, clearly we have at least 4 board members who are directly impacted by decisions that the district makes. And so that tends to bring a slightly different focus during our board meeting. But for the board, we should be trying to decide where are we going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when this is all in the rearview mirror. What does this look like? And we also have fairly new coming from the state with the passage of their last tax increase, ideas related to equity that we're supposed to implement. And so from a board perspective, what are we going to say as a policy where we're trying to go? And so one of the things I think about is the staff here is great. They're going to deal with the issue for September. I don't need to try and give them additional ideas for how to make things better. But from a board level, I think we do need to say, what do we want it to look like 3 years from now? So we're dealing with this issue about whether the students are in the classroom or out of the classroom. Not every year, but many years, we have a month, January, February, where we start to lose 20 or 30% of our students don't show up for school. Really impacts attendance and all those kinds of things. Some of the policy choices we make might make it so that in the future, those have less impact on those kids. As it relates to equity, there's bandwidth concerns when we start sending these Chromebooks out to the students. It's kind of a policy thing and a budgeting thing. As a district, are we going to say that kind of out of the school, not in person education is going to be part of what we do at District 7 for the foreseeable future, not just for September, but for 2 years from now and 3 years from now? Is that kind of thing the district wants to do as who we are as District 7? So that would involve things like, how do you make certain that every child has adequate bandwidth to go with their Chromebook? That might be a budgeting thing. We might have to budget so that certain families can actually get the amount of bandwidth they need to go with the Chromebook. So that's something we could do here at District 7, but it would be kind of a policy decision, not necessarily what are we going to do in September decision. So I'm just asking the board to start thinking about how are we going to articulate that so that there's direction for what we want District 7 to look like in the future.
So, Gary, what I gleaned from what you said is thinking about online learning post-COVID and continuing that, and what does that look like, and is that something we should be doing? And I don't have an opinion on that yet, and I'll continue to think about it. And I think a big piece of thinking about it is thinking about what that means for parents, continuing that, because a lot of parents, both parents are working, or there's a single parent working, and if they're not at school, they have to think about
daycare concerns or, having their kids supervised. So that's a big piece of that too, that I would just bring up.
Well, I think we have to acknowledge that education is sort of what we think we do, but clearly District 7, as it's run today, is childcare for small children, the ones that can't be on their own, which allows their parents to do other activities or work. Clearly, if that aspect of what we're doing today isn't being handled in the future, that's a difficulty for those parents. It's an aspect of what we do that may not be articulated in our mission or something like that.
I think, this is Member Durbin, I think too, though, for the opportunity to learn as we're going through this, don't let a good crisis go to waste. If a fully online curriculum is an option that gets developed through this for continuing education needs, I think of a couple family friends whose kids were pulled out of their public schools to go to an online school, and if we could maintain them in school district 7, it fits some kids and some parents working, commitment to do that instead. I think that would give us more flexibility to reach kids in the way that most resonates with them, but then also I think address some of the things I remember Gary Penning mentioning, hey, if we keep losing on this bond thing, at some point online school might become more of a thing where the capacity needs for in-classroom might be reduced. And I went, Gary, that's ridiculous, that's never going to happen. But I think about now, you go 3 to 5 years from now, and if we continue to increase our enrollment, will our facilities needs be as high if we have a full online curriculum that students, if that works for them and it's best for them and their parents, if they choose to opt in to do that? I think that's the other side of what you're saying, which is that might be the perfect scenario for some of our population.
And it's developmental. You've got kindergartners through seniors,
Exactly.
and what point in some 5th graders develop more independence earlier, or 4th graders than others, and so it's just it's creating a greater skill set capacity for us to meet the needs of all families, and so I don't envision ever not needing to see kindergartners and 1st graders every day, but as kids become more independent and are capable and have the skill set to manage their own stuff. I think this is the stuff that we're seeing the infancy of creating more options down the road to personalize for families and kids.
Well, and think about a kid needing to be out for a week or two for an illness or from injury or for a surgery or something, and being able to stay way more involved and caught up with their schoolwork because that transition can go between in the classroom and out of the classroom. So that's what I'd like to see, is that no slide happening while the kids get behind while they're out for whatever reason.
Well, I guess philosophically, the thoughts that come to me, first of all, I love science fiction and read a lot of it, and so I've over the years read about all sorts of kind of futuristic kinds of educational models. But I think I don't want to ever lose sight of the fact that our #1 job is to teach those kids. And I know I was just in a conversation with a friend who's a healthcare professional, has a lot of resources, and is very concerned about the education of her 3rd grade daughter. And while she is very well educated, had carved out time, she and her husband have both carved out time so that they're home at least one day a week each. But she needs to know what the school system can give her in the way of education for her child, and she doesn't want her child left behind. She can arrange for any kind of childcare she needs, whether it's family or daycare or nannies or whatever. but she is more concerned with how am I going to get my child educated? And that's my number one concern. How are we going to get these children educated, especially the ones who don't have the resources that this family has? And I know that my passion for education, goes beyond just the thought of education. It makes it so much easier for individuals and societies and whatever to exploit people when they're uneducated. The uneducated women in the world are the ones who are most exploited. The number one way to raise a country's general living is to educate their women. And I don't want a kind of haphazard, here's your online program, go for it, kind of laissez-faire program to develop for our most at-risk children.
Are there any other board reports?
Yeah, I want to throw in my involvement here is with 3 great-grandchildren, preschool. They're expecting the best out of District 7, and I'm going to see that they get it as long as I'm here. And I don't care what form it's in as long as they get it. We got to teach them kids, just like Debbie said and Ken Doherty years ago. And using this as an opportunity is the way that I love the way Scott presents that. An opportunity in hard times of hardship and difficulty, opportunities are presented to us here. And this is a high-powered group. And we're going to get the job done. And I am so pleased with the makeup of our board right now, including, of course, we can't be here all the time. So some of you will be gone from time to time, but we all have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I don't have any great-great-grandchildren, but I may before I leave the board. But as long as they're kids in this community and we live in this community, I love this community. And using that, let's go for the opportunity, make it available, whatever it takes. I want it to happen.
We'll do it. Any other board reports? I have another one.
I have just a question that when they were giving their updates, each of the directors, and they talked about, I think Linda talked about face shields for some of the special education educators. When it comes to PPE supplies and what that looks like,
We're all over it.
Okay.
Michael Morris has all the connections. I was in a breakout session with some superintendents and other district level folks while I was out in Wyoming. Lots of those meetings still happening. We talked about that, and one person gave me a link that I shared with Director Ely and Michael Morris, who's in charge of our ordering. So all of that is being considered right now. It's baked into the guidance that if you are going to be in regular close contact, that we have those available. Our CTE program is pretty handy and has already had the partnership with Asante to manufacture some of the parts. So I mean, I think we can be very nimble with regard to that. Thank you.
So another item, I went and dug out my communication plan, which was a really good one, but I don't think we've executed quite as good as we could. I'm wondering if we can bring that back at the next.
I have Kristen working on it and putting it on the July agenda, potentially early August, pending all these other things. But Kristen working up the draft stuff. So thank you.
Okay. And my last one was related to the budget meeting stuff that we went through recently. After we had our budget meeting, it kind of occurred to me that we were actually late for the budget committee to essentially influence the budget unless we start treating the budget committee meetings as input from the community that will be executed a year from now, not for the budget that we're talking about.
So I can let Director Ely address that, but we did have an original budget committee schedule that was going to start earlier and have a few more sessions, but with all of the wrinkles of budget issues and topics that have come up around SIA and Measure 98 or high school success, as well as general fund stuff, we weren't given solid numbers. They're still not real solid, but Sherry, do you want to speak any more to the budget committee and timing and how we switched gears? We were going to start earlier, but we switched some gears.
Hey, Gary, we did actually start the budget committee process early this year. We had our first meeting that first week in March, which is substantially earlier than we have in years previous. Usually we have, our tours that start in early April or late April and end the end of May. And then we always have our budget committee meeting that first Tuesday or Thursday in June. And so we did start earlier this year, and then things did get derailed when the COVID-19 issue occurred. And so, we weren't allowed to meet in person. Our funding was insecure. We didn't know, and we still don't know what our funding is going to be for next year. And so we did make an attempt to start that process earlier this year, and we'll do the same again next year. If you feel like we need to start the process earlier than March, I'm happy to do that. It would be mainly, for discussion purposes and just to hear what kind of directions the committee feels like we need to be moving that are different than where we are, at present. So happy to do whatever you would like us to do in that regard, Gary.
Well, I was just thinking that there should be like a really early meeting, which really doesn't talk about the numbers, but talks about what is the community's input for things that they care about in the budget. And then the process that you have at the end, which is fine for doing the final numbers and that kind of stuff. But it was just clear from our budget meeting that some of those ideas were way too late for anything to occur in that budget. So.
Well, I don't, as Member Brownell, so I think about the process being on this board and on the budget committee as being more of a review versus managing what should be done, but a review of what has been done or what will be done. And so as far as public input, I know that we have, we were concerned about what does the public really want, and did a lot of trying to bring the community in on the Student Success Act decision. I know the somewhat less than successful bringing in of the group of community members was a step in that response of, okay, what does the community really want? Unfortunately, the facilitator for that was an inadequate substitute. But as far as trying to get input from the community versus review of the professionals who are putting together the budget. You know, there's a different view of that than I have than you have on what.
I think so. I would agree that we disagree.
This is Member Durbin. The most recent meeting we had was one of the best budget committee meetings I had been to. There was great questions. Everybody kind of contributed their piece, and I think there was some really valuable discussion. I would agree that even if it was still a review step in the process, having that a little bit earlier should something kind of come out of those questions that we do want to have time to have Sherry go back to the drawing board on just a couple things like we kind of ended the meeting on with the south versus north and the HVAC and the timing of it and all that. It did feel a little rushed if there was a change we wanted to make, because we had to squeeze in an emergency meeting should we want to do that. So maybe that meeting moved a little bit earlier, and I understand that this year is obviously an outlier with everything we were dealing with, but I think if we had meetings like that where we had, people obviously went through the documents beforehand, had great questions as we were going through it. I appreciated the format this year. I just think having that a little bit earlier would just give us a little bit more buffer should things like that come up that we want to entertain before we vote to approve the final.
Yeah, we had every intention to do that earlier.
Yeah,
So,
no, I liked how the process was this year.
okay. We'll seek to strike a nice balance going into next year.
I think that we don't want to forget the contributions made by the lay members of our budget committee. In a very brief window, they have to really function. I mean, we have a little more time to breathe in between decisions, but boy, they're right there. It's been that way every year. And we have the best possible representatives from this committee as lay members. Absolutely, we get the cream of the crop. And we always have, we always will, if that's our intent. And we always have an excellent budget presentation by Sherry Ely. I've done this for years. She's got it down. She's the best in the state, as far as I'm concerned. And I hope she does pursue state office if she's still in that loop.
She is.
She's that good. We've got great people here, folks, and we don't want to forget those lay members because I haven't really met Cher this year, but boy, she's sharp. And I know it now. So I know I'll treat her with respect next time around, for sure. I mean, to get people like that are willing to just give you one day, maybe two, I think it works if they're that quality. So I'm real pleased with it.
Are there any other board reports? Okay, we'll move to action items. So I was a little fuzzy on which ones are first reading and which ones are second. So I do want to keep those second.
Second and final readings of all the policies 6.5. The others are one-time resolutions and approvals.
Well, so 6.5.1, 2, and 3, they say new, so.
Yeah, it's a new required policy by OSBA. That's what that means. But it's already gone before the board one time.
Okay.
That's correct,
So
right?
all-
Levi?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just incorrect.
Yeah, we put new in there because OSBA has brought it to us and said this is a
So
new requirement.
all
Not
of these are
revised.
the second time through? Okay. All right, at this time I'd like to I think we'll just take them in order. I entertain a motion for 6.1 resolution 1920-7 appropriation transfers within the 1920 budget.
So moved.
Member D. LaGrange moved.
Thank you, Nelson, second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 1920-7 appropriation transfers within the 2019-20 budget. Any comments?
No comments, just squaring up the budget so Sherry can close out the books.
And this is Member Brownell, is the repair and maintenance COVID related or just extra more repairs than we thought we'd do?
Just extras.
It's, Debbie, it's not COVID related. It's more due to just the age of our facilities and just seeing more items that are needing to be repaired. And so in the 2021 budget, I did increase our maintenance budget just because of the increase in repair and maintenance that we're seeing in our facilities due to age.
Like when the heat went out at Allendale or wherever that was, and all the things dropped up last year, I remember. Well, that's fun.
Is there any further discussion? Secretary Clark, would you call the vote, please?
Yes, Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Brownell? Yes. Member Richardson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
Yes.
Member De La Grange?
Yes.
Member Durbin?
Yes.
And Member Wilkins?
Okay, motion carries. At this time, I entertain a motion for resolution 1920-8, adoption of the 2021 budget, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes.
Member Nelson and I will make a motion to approve.
Member Durbin, second.
Any comments?
Nope, this is pretty straightforward. This is adopting the budget and allowing us to make the appropriations as proposed and setting the taxes.
And is there any discussion from the board? And we're sure we got the 4.524A whatever number right? That's correct? Okay.
Yes.
We had one year
I know.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, Secretary Clark, would you please call the vote?
Yes, Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
Yes.
Member De La Grange?
Yes.
Member Durbin?
Yes.
And Member Wilkins?
So can we determine that Member Wilkins is not actually in attendance?
I saw her earlier on there.
Oh.
I punched in the phone number and then to confirm it with her. And she would have called in earlier, but she might have dropped off.
Okay.
Or she's muted and doesn't know how to unmute on the phone.
I was just trying to determine if we had unanimous votes for.
I'm here.
Yeah,
It makes so much more sense. I've been talking the whole time.
So we're trying to figure out what kind of vote you were casting.
All of my votes were yeses.
all right.
Perfect. Unanimous.
Okay. Thank you for that. At this time, I would entertain a motion for approval of 2021 administrative, supervisory, and confidential salary schedules with authorization for contract issuance.
So moved. Cliff Coolman.
Member Brownell, second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
No comments. I would just say that the schedule on this is reflective of the salary increases for all categories of employees. The COLA of 2.5%.
So to be clear, the range is all moved up 2.5.
That is correct.
Any further discussion? Secretary Clark, would you please call the vote?
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
Yes.
Member De La Grange?
Yes.
Member Durbin?
Yes.
And Member Wilkins?
Yes.
I heard that voice.
Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion for approval of second and final reading of repeal, revise, and new policies and ARs. That is 2025.1
Calendars.
Calendar,
So for the calendars.
Yep.
All right. 6.4.
This is
Let me
member,
restate.
okay.
I'd entertain a motion for approval of revised elementary and secondary calendars.
This is member Durbin, so moved.
Member Wilkins, second.
Yeah, she got a second in there.
Here on the record.
I like it.
Any further discussion?
I have a question about the calendars. I know earlier the directors were talking about, and I think it was related to secondary mostly, but kind of looking at a quarter system with a reduced class load. And I see on here that doesn't apply to elementary, I'm guessing, because I'm seeing it says trimester on elementary and semester on secondary.
Yeah, we've always been trimester elementary and semester for grading purposes at the secondary level. And so what is not reflected is that model, because it isn't set in stone that we're going to go to this quarter system yet, but this calendar allows us that flexibility.
Okay. Yeah. And elementary will stay trimester?
Elementary will stay trimester. They're not impacted as much because they have more all-day professional development that they were able to convert to instructional days, whereas at the secondary level, their professional development is largely built into the late start Wednesdays. So we had to do some negotiating and navigating with that. They did have some half-day professional development that we were able to convert. And so working with them, you'll see that the parent-teacher conferences is moving out. So we had to negotiate some of that.
So what happens with the parent-teacher conferences?
So we're going to be in this new unique hybrid world where parent communication is critical and essential. And right now, secondary conferences are so poorly attended. We're fortunate if we get 20% attendance. And so knowing that this model is going to require more parent engagement and communication, parents are going to, unfortunately, be forced into probably too much communication again, but we're going to try to manage it. We feel like this model is going to naturally engage parents more. So it's a sacrifice we had to make to do what we needed to do to launch. So yeah, what do we have to give up to get what we need for kids?
So are we giving it up for elementary as well?
No.
No, just secondary?
Secondary.
Okay.
Yeah. Maintaining the elementary, we feel that's pretty still critical.
So it's this member Durbin is the biggest change then. Previously we were going to be starting school earlier than normal.
Yeah.
And now we're going to be starting kind of what would have been on time?
Yeah, right after Labor Day.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Secretary Clark, would you please call the vote?
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
Yes.
Member De La Grange?
Yes.
Member Durbin?
Yes.
Member Wilkins?
Yes.
Okay, this time I entertain a motion for approval of second and final reading of repealed, revised, and new policies and ARs, GBEA, GBA, BA-AR, GBL, GBLA.
So moved. Member Brownell?
Second, Coleman.
Any discussion? So, I find myself being too late. Don't know why I missed it the first time around, but I really struggled when I read 5.5.2. The first paragraph, I have no idea what it turns out.
Yeah, it could be better worded, but the intent of that paragraph is to say anything sponsored by the district that involves employees, harassment is prohibited.
Maybe you should
Whether
just say, pretty much any harassment covered.
Pretty much any. And you know what happens when too many attorneys get a hold of these things, right? So even Jim Green will tell you that.
So I guess the question is it good enough to approve it today, or should we try to make that a little clearer?
There's one part at the end of the third line that says, or between a district and a district employee. Does that make sense? Or is it the district and the district employee, or is
They're
I don't know
trying,
if
they're trying to cover every base, and so then they said it like 3 different ways.
Okay.
With too many ors.
Yeah, there's 3 variables. There's the 2 parties and where it takes place. And if one of those parties has anything to do with the district, it applies.
Correct.
Whether you're on premises and it's 2
Correct.
people not affiliated with the district, or the district and anybody else, whether it's on or off district premises, that's how I try to interpret it. If one of those 3 things has an affiliation with the district, this policy applies.
So is it supposed to be or between the district and a district employee? Or a district is like any school district, or, you know what I mean?
The district, it refers to Grants Pass School District.
But it says a district, so I think that's
Yeah.
what it
Oh, I see
should
what
be
you're
the
saying.
district. Then let's not hold 3 Rivers accountable to harassment on our.
Hey, Casey.
Yeah.
I think that actually does mean a district, not District 7, because we have had issues with staff that have been at sporting events or something like that. And so I do believe that means not a District 7 district.
Okay.
Well, he's trying to cover everybody.
Yeah. Point well.
So it's all the interpretations,
Yeah.
right?
That makes sense.
Just strike all that and say harassment shall not be tolerated.
You would be a great poor attorney.
Yeah, let the lawyers
It wouldn't
justify
take a
their
lot of
fees.
money.
Because it would just be 1 page, you finish it in 3 minutes and you couldn't charge that much. You'd allow them their time to work.
Okay, well,
There you go in the red line.
guess I'll let it go. So, is there any further discussion? Secretary Clark, please call the vote.
Yes. Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Brownell?
Yes,
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
Do I have to stall before I answer?
Yes.
Member DeLaGrange?
Yes.
Member Durbin?
Yes.
Member Wilkins?
Yes.
Okay, at this point, we will move to agenda item 7, future meeting dates and suggested agenda items. We have the annual organizational board meeting Tuesday, July 14th at 5 p.m. Board meeting July 28th at noon, which is, that's tentative, so I suppose actually we should, now would be a good time to decide if we're really not going to do that one.
well, doesn't it really depend on new information from ODE and planning from staff?
Yeah,
Whether or not that
so
meeting-
the next, we have an update between the 14th and 28th. We will be getting the 3rd revision of the guidance. That may impact what we do, and it's a matter of, I can send the board information in writing regarding how the new information is going to impact our planning, or we can do another update with our team here. We're getting a new update on June 30th, and then I believe July 21st, somewhere around there, that we'll be getting another update.
So we'll leave that on the schedule as a tentative meeting. Maybe we'll just go full up Zoom and have a very light agenda. Something like that. And the board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 11th at 5 p.m. Also at this time, we should probably discuss rescheduling of the board workshop. So,
This is Member Wilkins. Kirk, you just referenced a July update as well. Did you have a date on that?
21st, maybe.
Yeah, ODE is going to give us an update on July 21st. They're doing
Okay, thank you.
every 3 weeks. They're giving us a new update.
Okay, I was aware of the June. I just didn't have the date for July.
Was it Kristen at OSBA? Yep. So for the board, do you have a date which you think works for the majority of us?
What about July
I'll make it.
28th at 12:30? Which is just the tentative schedule for the meeting, if we don't need it.
I'm not gonna be here the 14th, and I'm gone that whole week, so hopefully I can call in the meeting. See, but the 28th will be fine.
I prefer the 5 o'clock as opposed to noon.
28th at 5.
So if we had an update to get from OD for the 21st, we could have a quick update and then move into more of the workshop after that.
Yep.
Still use that Tuesday.
Okay. Cassie, 28.
That sounds. I don't have my calendar in front of me. I'll make it work.
Okay, thank you. That
Yes.
good?
Yes. Thank you.
Ready with the rest of the board members?
Sure.
Okay. With that,
I have a quick question about, I was just wondering when we were going to address superintendent goals, because I wasn't sure when that was happening, or if we knew when that was happening, or if we need to talk about when it's happening, or
well,
it's not happening.
we were trying to get the workshop in and then let that flow into the goals part. You have any thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, that was the original workflow. If that's still acceptable, I do know by policy the goals to be set in July. Give 9 months before evaluation, so that can still technically satisfy that. If we do it, well, that's the hard part, is making decisions based on a workshop and flowing into goals.
I mean, I think a little bit with timing, if we wanted to accelerate it, is there an option to do that? I mean, I guess part of it is relying on Kristen's schedule a little bit, because obviously with everything that you guys are already trying to work on to prepare for the fall, I'm fine with it being in July, but if it can happen sooner, I'm also open to that, so we, have more time to do that and get those established sooner rather than later, but I know we're kind of dependent on what Kristen's availability is going to be too. We can ask her.
And if it's acceptable to you, to do them on August 11th and take what we get out of the workshop on the 28th and develop the goals that align with that for the 11th. I'm very amenable. I know it cuts down the 9 months a little bit, but it won't change the workflow, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost a little bit of parallel path. So possibly we can accelerate. Generally, you have your page of goals, and you could get that out into us. In fact, you already did that.
Yeah, he did.
I don't think I gave you anything for this year.
Maybe it was just the last year when we were trying to review it.
Yep.
Yep.
So why don't we try and accelerate that part?
Draft that. And try to have that for July 14th, or excuse me, July 14th.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, really, it's the superintendent goals need to focus or center around the district goals, how well we're able to perform on those. And I would almost say, bring me the district goals, and those will be, I hope, closely aligned with whatever superintendent goals we have. I mean, I get we want to evaluate leadership in various things, but certainly, you brought up the comment tonight about, where do we want to be in 3 years, and what do we want things to look like? And that's really the goals that the district needs to have kind of set for itself. And that's really what I'm hoping to see, and that's kind of what we talked about last time. It's not so much about the superintendent giving me, the goals that you hope to accomplish, because I hope that whatever that is, it's the same as the district goals, so we're all aligned. And really, a board's goals should be aligned with the district goals. And so It's really those district goals. What are we trying to accomplish for the kids and the staff? Where are we taking this as an organization? And then really, how well does the superintendent do? Well, it's how well do we move that organization forward with whatever those goals are? How well does the board do? Well, how well is the board helping the district achieve those goals? So it's really, that is the core of what I hope we can have established, is where are we taking the district as a whole? And then how do we support that as a board? How do you support that as the superintendent? So I get we want superintendent goals, but I mean, my evaluation as a superintendent will be how well do we implement the vision that the district has for wherever we're going. And that's, so if you gave me that as your goal, we will implement the district plan and this is how we're going to do it, then I will say that's a great goal for the superintendent. I'm satisfied with that, and that's what we're going to measure our performance on.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm just concerned about the technical aspects, and we do need to somewhat, we have a policy that talks about how we're going to do the evaluation and the superintendent's goals. And so if we need to make policy changes and stuff like that, it's going to have to be somewhat hybrid. So because there are the technical aspects, so along with where we're really trying to go, we're trying to do both at the same time. I think we get started on just following through with what our policy technicals we say now, and we won't necessarily adopt those goals. We may just have a discussion of them. Then we'll have a workshop where we work on the district goals, and the first meeting in August, we can maybe make those two things come together.
Yeah, it might be in slightly reverse order, but we're having that discussion of July 14th will at least allow us on August 11th, we've already kind of gone through that, then the workshop, and we'll have a much more productive final on August 11th.
Okay, and then the only other thing is, Member Wilkins wants the retreat. Not sure when we're going to schedule that, but I'll just put that out there so you guys can be thinking about that. And with that, we have no executive session. This meeting is adjourned.